Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. So today we're going to do the Hall of Shame. We're going to talk about some of the plants that haven't quite been going to plan. I know we very often look at all the things that's going well and we talk about what to do with them to make them go well. Well, today I just need to prove to everybody, as if I needed to prove to everybody, that I get things wrong lots and lots of times. In fact, it almost sometimes seems like I get things wrong more than I get right, but I try to look upon that as a learning experience. Now, just before we get into it, the Hippeastrum on the left there, I talked about it in a quite recent video as being a species Hippeastrum. I said it was Hippeastrum blossfeldii, and in fact that's what it was sold to me as, since it turns out that I was sent a duff bulb and it's actually apple blossom. I think it's apple blossom anyway, it certainly looks like it from the pictures I've seen. I did actually have this plant quite a while back, a number of years ago, and it does look similar to it. I don't know why I didn't even notice. The bulbs are only £5 each, but I have got another one to show you, which I think is the one that was actually sent or meant to be sent. So let's have a look at those plants that I've nearly killed over the last few months. Let's dive in. And we are in. So, looking round the greenhouse, it all looks absolutely fabulous to my eye anyway at the moment. But there are those plants that are dotted about the place that I've kind of hidden from view, that are not going too well. In fact, just glancing over at this one's not going too well because it needs a water. Look how it's wilted. That's just happened today, so that needs to be watered. I best get onto that pretty quickly. But yeah, so I said I would just start off over on this side with looking at one of the Hippeastrums that did actually arrive and turn out to be the one that it was meant to be. So this is Picotee, and I'm pretty sure this is Picotee. I absolutely love this kind of orange edge to it, right at the edge. That's a really, really nice hybrid. I think it's a hybrid. So yeah, the apple blossom, which was sold to me as blossfeldii, but it's not. It's nothing like blossfeldii. It's certainly a lot bigger than I anticipated. So what we're going to talk about is the not quite failures, but kind of on the cusp of being failures. And I'll have a chat about why I think that might be, if I can remember. So we'll start off over here with an orchid, would you believe? I mean, I think it's worth pointing out that very often, I think sometimes people occasionally forget that I'm not growing these plants in a place where they want to grow. Many of these plants, because of course, well, in fact, all of these plants are tropical plants, and I'm in a greenhouse, and a greenhouse has tons and tons of its own particular characteristics, which makes it particularly unsuitable for growing tropical plants in a temperate climate. It's not insulated properly. I know we've got bubble wrap, but that really doesn't provide a huge amount of insulation. The climate, the temperature isn't really controlled properly. I try to anticipate and make improvements to that, but again, I'm fairly limited over the range that I can do that. There are loads of things with a greenhouse. You know what happens with a greenhouse. I really think it's better to do it in a house or a grow room that's attached to the house, but I've got what I've got. I'm really happy with what I've got, and I do my absolute best to create the best conditions that I can, and many times I fail because, of course, I'm not growing them in the environment that they want to grow. And that's the whole point of the channel. That's what it's all about, is trying to grow these plants in a place that they don't want to grow. So we're going to start with this one, this Coelogyne cristata. So I've had this a few years, and you can see the bulbs are rather shriveled. Every year it comes with some new bulbs, and they look really nice at first. Eventually they shrivel. Maybe I'm not giving it enough water, I don't know. I've tried to kind of soak them to see whether they'd pop back out again, whether they'd swell up again, but they never have done. And the leaves always look okay. I did have a year where they kind of got some brown markings underneath. That's not happened recently. I believe my problem may well be, and this is one of the things that's interesting about this, is that many of the people that I know in this country who grow this have no trouble with it whatsoever, and they treat it as a plant that they can totally forget about. And I think the reason is, from one of my conversations from somebody in Madeira who actually has it growing wild on like a bank in the garden. One of the main problems is that it doesn't, or I don't allow it to go down to like about 5 degrees Celsius over the winter months. And it may be that kind of shock temperature during the winter months that makes it so that it blooms, and it's never bloomed for me. I think I've had it 3, maybe 4 years. And when I think about it, the people who I know have this, they keep it in a cool greenhouse, and maybe that's one of the reasons. That might not be the entire reason. I keep trying with it. I know I can only get it down to 12 degrees. I can't really get it any cooler without putting it in a cooler greenhouse, which I don't have. I try to keep the cool side of the greenhouse to 12. So that's one that I may well give up on at some point. So that's the first one on my Hall of Shame. The next one we're going to move over to is a carnivorous plant, if you can actually see it. So this is the Drosera regia, and it's looking a bit scummy at the moment, that water. But if we kind of zoom in, you can just about see, that's like a weed seedling there, but you can just about see one of the Drosera regia there. There's another one there. There's another one there. I think there's probably about 5 or 6 dotted about the place. They've been in there since January, and that's the sum total of their growth since January. Now, I've never grown Drosera regia before, so I don't know how quickly they actually grow, but I'm looking at some of the other Drosera that I've got. Let's just move over to this one over here. So you can see this one is fairly big, but that's taken several years to get that big, and it was rather small for a long time. So it could well be that I've not done anything that's wrong with it. It's just the way that they grow. They grow very slowly. However, I know for a fact, because I planted them, that the coir that I've got under here hasn't been washed, which means that it was still full of salt. That was before I realised that I had to do that. I didn't know I had to wash it out. So it's quite a high salt content, so that might be one reason why they're slow. They are still growing, the moss is still growing, they haven't died yet, so we'll give them a bit longer. But at the moment, that's still on my wall of shame. Hopefully that may end up being one of the successful plants. We'll just have to see. Okay, next on the wall of shame, I can't remember whether we're doing wall of shame or hall of shame, is my Miltoniopsis. So kind of nestled amongst all these gorgeous plants. You would not even spot it unless you knew what you were looking for. We need to zoom in to the brown bits. So this is my Newton Falls, which is looking very, very sad. It's one of these things, Miltoniopsis, that it looked fantastic for a long time, and I had 2 sets of blooms on it. So it even looked fantastic in between. It could do new growths. It just didn't seem to be worried whatsoever about my conditions. And then this happened. I then repotted it into coconut husks. And yes, I've got some new growths on it. You can see the one on the left has begun to die off. And these 2 have been like that for rather a long time. And if experience is anything to go by, they won't do anything from there on in. I can even see some new roots down there at the bottom, but I just very much doubt anything's going to happen to that now, or it's certainly going to be so slow that I'm going to give up on it. And I think the reason is the temperatures. Again, a greenhouse is such an unstable environment. Despite all the things that I've done to it to try and accommodate these various fluctuations, I can't do it to the point that Miltoniopsis wants. I believe they enjoy between about 18 to 23 degrees Celsius, and anything below and anything above, and they will struggle. And I can't do that. I can keep it above 18, but I can't keep it below about 25. In fact, I can't even keep it below 30, and therein for me lies the issue with Miltoniopsis. I think I've tried everything else, that's all it can be. And that would also tie in with the fact that many people find that they can stick it on the kitchen windowsill and it's absolutely fine with no problems. So they get in the humidity, they get in that kind of stable temperature there, which I can't manage in the greenhouse. I could of course get an air conditioning unit, but I really don't think the terms of cost I want to go any higher than what I'm already paying. And of course the other plants in the greenhouse that like the warmer temperatures, things like the cattleyas and the vanda and lots of the other plants, they like the warm temperatures, they don't mind going up to 30. You know, I'm playing one off against the other. So that's my problem with Miltoniopsis. I very much doubt I'm going to buy another one if it's for the greenhouse. Again, I talked about this on another video, that yes, I could go and take it in the house, but that's not the point for me anyway. The point for me is to try and do it in the greenhouse. This is what I've got, so this is what I'm going to try and do. So as far as Miltoniopsis goes, unless it suddenly comes back to life, I don't think I'm going to try again with another one. You can't win them all, can you? But you can certainly try. So the next one on my Hall or Wall of Shame, whichever one we're doing today, is one that I know for a fact that other people have also struggled with. Plenty of people struggle with Miltoniopsis. Plenty of people struggle with, I'll just grab it, another very sad looking plant. So this is my Burrageara Nelly Isler, or Oncidopsis Nelly Isler. One of my favourite plants, although not at the moment. And it did this last year. And the reason that it did this was that I believe this is like a genuine intermediate plant, and I don't have the intermediate temperatures. I have too low for it and I have too high for it. And unfortunately, they're too high, but it didn't really seem to mind that. It was the low bits. I had it at 12 degrees and it was okay for a month or two. Then when I got into the third month, it thought, hey, hang on a second, this is too much. Yes, again, it's got some new growths on it, and last year they did come back strongly, but this year they've not really bothered. They're just kind of hanging around, and I can see one of the new growths there has begun to die off. So again, I'd give it the coconut husk treatment. Whether it'll come back or not, I don't know. I'm not feeling as confident this year, because last year those growths came back really strongly. So I think that one might be, you know, that might be it for it. In fact, as I'm doing the video, I'm going to take it through to the cooler side, because the cooler side is a little bit more towards intermediate temperatures at this particular moment. No idea where I'm going to put it, because I don't really have much room. See if I can squish it down there for now. I will try again with a Burrageara, because I really like it, and like I say, I believe that I can keep it towards the intermediate more than I can manage with the Miltoniopsis conditions. The trick for me, I think, is to, once it gets to like about December, end of December, and it's had a month or two of the cold temperatures, to move it over to the warmer side, so that it doesn't really kind of languish in those temperatures. So that's the Burrageara, and that's the issue with that. Okay, so we're going to have a look at a Tradescantia. So this one is Nanouk Lilac, and you're actually seeing it post my last video. In fact, you might have spotted the other video. I'm not sure whether I've put it out or not yet, because I do tend to film these things and I swap and change around when I actually post them up. So if you haven't seen it, this was actually over this side. So I had it right under the sun, where the sun comes in, and I've moved it and I've repotted it. I've put it in line of the fan so that it can get the humidity kind of dried off, because in the morning when you come in, and there's all like little bits of droplets of water, so this is very, very prone to leaf markings and leaf rotting through humidity and bits of water sitting on it and splash from the watering. It needed a repot as well, one or two other things that I explained in detail in that last video. So it's looking a little better, even though I only did that video like literally about 3 hours ago. It just really now needs to grow and to come back for me, and hopefully it will do that. But you can see, you know, I've cut a lot of the damage off, but there was an awful lot of damage on there from the humidity, and probably a little bit of sun damage as well. So the fact that it was in two smaller pots wasn't helping. So I've given that some TLC this afternoon, and hopefully that will now begin to show me something a little bit more like you would actually get in a house, because a house is much more suited to the conditions that it needs rather than a greenhouse. So hopefully that will jump off my wall or Hall of Fame very soon and become one of the star performers. And the last one I'm going to show you today on my Hall of... No, it's not Hall of Fame, is it? Did I say Hall of Fame? Hall of Shame. So my Hall of Shame plant here is this Hoya. So this is Hoya Carnosa Crimson Queen. And again, look up the care conditions on this. It's actually, it's climbing up. It's a climber climbing up a climber. It's climbing up my nepenthes there. I did actually have to unhook this Thunbergia from there pretty recently. I keep trying to move that back down. This is another one that actually prefers to be outside. It just prefers to be outside. It likes a really bright light. It doesn't like what I'm providing here. Anyway, we're not talking about that one. That one's not doing too badly at the moment. We're talking about the Hoya Carnosa. So again, I've had it about 3 years. Certainly had it since the greenhouse. It was one of my first greenhouse plants. I'm trying to grow it as much as I can, equivalent to what you would get in a house. But again, I've got several extremes that I can't do anything about. It's going to go a lot hotter here than it would do in a house, and that may be the issue again. So there's kind of a theme running through all these things, really. There are plants that I can provide the conditions that they like for some of the time, but certainly not all. And these are plants that just don't seem to like to deviate too much from those conditions. A lot of the plants that do really well are the ones that, okay, they might like the conditions that I provide most of the time, but they don't suffer too much if those conditions are slightly off. But this isn't one of them. It's okay. It's not dead. It's surviving. It's growing. But I've only ever had one, is it peduncles we call them? One little shoot with some blooms coming on it. I had one and it formed some buds, and then the buds promptly blasted. So I've still never seen the blooms on this yet, even though it keeps producing these big, long, searching, rambling shoots. Maybe it will do soon. Maybe it's just a maturity thing. Maybe it needs a repot. Maybe it needs to be moved to another place. I don't know. It's something I'm going to have an experiment with. But at the moment, I'm not really that happy with it. It's another failure for me. I need it to bloom. I need that in my soul. It's got to bloom. And at the moment, it's just kind of being carried along. Now, of course, I do have plants, usually orchids, I should say, that I've thrown away and I've forgotten all about. So I can't show you those, but suffice it to say that I've had certainly many failures on top of these that I'm showing you now. I'm looking at this one down here. I always forget what it's called. Miltonia spectabilis, a gorgeous plant, did really well for me, bloomed spectacularly well a couple of times for a couple of years. Here we go, bits falling off it already. It's actually not doing too badly at the moment since I put it in this kind of coconut husk and the basket that's a bit bigger. It was in it was almost like a multi-purpose compost that I had it in previously. Again, that was purely down to my ignorance on these plants, and it does prefer to be in this kind of sprawling, shallow basket. It's not really going on my Hall of Shame yet. Maybe it's kind of got one leg on there. I'm hoping that's going to return for me because I really enjoyed the blooms on that. I think it's a species, if memory serves me correctly. The Plumeria are doing a lot better this year for some reason. This one, there's the most leaves it's ever had on it, and same with that one, but still no blooms. Now, I know that they're not too small to bloom because this one actually arrived with like a spent bloom spike on it, so I know it has done. So maybe this year, who knows? Again, I think we're past the season for it, but the seasons are all to pot anyway, aren't they? When you're in a greenhouse, the seasons they make their own seasons up, don't they? So yeah, I think that's it. That's all my various plants at the moment that are on my wall or Hall of Shame. So they're in my Hall of Shame or they're on my Wall of Shame. Do you have any plants that you've tried over and over again and you just keep failing with them despite all your best efforts? I'd love to know what they are. Put it in the comments for me and I'd love to hear about it. I'm just looking at this Picotee now. I just noticed, because it's only opened today, so that one's quite white. That one looks quite yellow. Can you see the difference there? There's a definite difference in colour hue. Now maybe it's just because the one in my left hand is a little bit younger, but I mean both of them only opened this morning. Maybe it was yesterday. Could have been yesterday. I forget. So it's a lovely plant anyway, isn't it? I like the fact that it's quite dwarf. I think that helps because obviously with some Hippeastrum they're absolutely huge like this one. So yeah, that's my Hall of Shame, Wall of Shame. Can you put in the comments anything that you would put in your Wall of Shame, on your Wall of Shame, in your Hall of Shame? And for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.